First of all, I hope you like our dramatic title. We were forced to take all our training online within 30 days. Here's what we learned. We thought we'd try and do something a bit different this time. So rather than focusing in on a specific program, we're going to look at a very particular challenge that people are facing right now, and that we've been dealing with over the last month or so. And I know it's not just us at Skillfluence that are having to deal with this. It's something that's affecting pretty much all of us. And I think it's a really massive challenge for anyone who's already booked online training. You're sort of thinking, right, well, you know, do we have to cancel this? Do we postpone it? Or can we take it online? So today we've got two fantastic guest speakers that's going to talk to us about their experience of rapidly taking training online. And what I'm hoping is that that'll give you a sense of what's possible and what's realistic under the circumstances, because we're not working out of some fabulous e-learning studio with all the right kit in place and a team running around in the background and shouting instructions to us. You know, we're working out our homes. We're trying to keep our children and cats and dogs out of the way, and out of direct line of sight of our webcam. So just for my own interest and you know, just to get us started, I'd like to hear what kind of interruptions you've had while you've been on video calls over the last few weeks. So in the chat box, what I'd like you to do is, if you've been interrupted by a child in the last few weeks, type 1. If you've been interrupted by a cat, it's a 2. If it's a dog, then it's a 3. And believe me, you can have all 3 if it's true for you. Or feel free to share any other interruptions that you might have had, whether it's animals, partners, events that have interrupted video calls. And that can be either side of things, whether that's at your end or at the other person's end when you've been on video calls and video conferences. Oh, we've got a few that have got more than one. Yeah, to be honestly, this is really just my way of saying to you, I apologize in advance. This beautiful screen in the background is not just like fantastic branding, but it's also hiding a sleeping cat, but it may not sleep forever. So apologies if cats start roaming around. I think quite a few of you may already have met. All right, Catherine, kids eating spaghetti hoops on toast. It's good not to be on video at this moment for you guys then. Yeah, postman, yeah. 3 children trying to interrupt you right now. Yes, exactly. And I think that's my point. You know, we're dealing with something a little bit different, and we're at home. So it brings different things to and different challenges. So the goal of today really is for you to pick up some new ideas, perhaps a fresh perspective, a new approach, some practical tips that are going to allow you to create an action as a result of today that'll help keep you moving forward. Because I think that would be a really good use of an hour from my point of view, and hopefully from your point of view, is that you get something that you can take away from this and apply to your particular situation. All right, I'm just looking at Jenny's father-in-law bellowing from outside. Yes, there's all sorts of shenanigans going on in the background, isn't there? Okay, so some webinar guidelines, just a few guidelines to help everyone get the most out of this. We're recording it, so the link will be made available after the webinar. So please feel free to share that once it's out there. Type questions and comments in the chat box and keep the comments coming as we go through. You can make your questions public so everyone can see, but you can't, and that would be my preference, but clearly you can also just talk to us as well. If you want to just speak to the panelists, then the drop down does allow you to do that as well. Sorry, you're on mute, so I can't hear you. but maybe we'll get a chance to catch up after this. And it should be a jam-packed 60 minutes of content here. So why are we doing this? Really, it's about the opportunity to learn from each other. We've been having a lot of conversations over the last few weeks, and one of the things that's really come up is people that are organising a training session or events are worried that what might they lose from running an event online. And although it's absolutely true that online is not the same as in-person offline, I think what I'd like to show you today is that there are a lot of ways to adapt and design training programs so that you can get a lot of the good stuff that you get in face-to-face training and events. And yes, there's challenges, but there's also real benefits to being online. A great way of doing this is to share it through the webinar so that we can all learn from each other. Really, we're wanting to facilitate a conversation, provide support to the researcher development community. And with that in mind, we do have a plan to create a forum for further conversation among you all, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end of today's session. So for those of you that don't know us, and I can see quite a few new people and new faces, if you know what I mean. So we've been around, Skillfluence has been around for about 4 years now. We've trained more than 5,000 researchers, academics and PhD students. We've got an amazing range of trainers, more than 20 real subject matter experts, and we work with universities, more than 35 of them across the UK and Europe. And I can see some of our European partners there from Ireland, Finland, Italy have joined us today. So we focus on supporting and developing researchers to look outwards. It's really about giving them practical skills in how to communicate, collaborate, innovate, and work with them and work on industry and business and startups. So basically for us, it's really about helping them make a difference. And usually we deliver in-person training, residentials, and facilitated events alongside blended and online programs. But as you can see, we've gone from this to this. And for now, we're an online training company. And for anyone that knows me currently and is thinking, gosh, Alison's looking really tanned and glowing. I'm not, it's just, as you can see, I've got a quality lighting set up that prevents me from looking like a ghost. So I'm Alison Gray. I founded Skillfluence in 2015 after spending time in sabbatical in the US. And when I came back, I set up Skillfluence with the aim of working with universities and researchers to support commercialization, have an impact through research, through professional and business skills development. Also, it'd be really nice to take this opportunity to introduce a really important new member of our team. I'm absolutely delighted that Rachel Clark has joined us last week. So that's quite a time to start. But it's brilliant to have her, and she's taking on the new role of Training Operations Manager to really support the coordination of all our events. And she's got a huge amount of experience in researcher development. So she's just joined us from her previous role at the University of Strathclyde and the Industrial Biotechnology Innovation Centre. And I'm sure I'll be making more introductions over the next few weeks and months. It looks like there's a few folk in there that already know Rachel. She's on chat box duty today alongside Zach Sorrells, who's also running tech support in the background. You may have met Zach at the last one. Okay, so I've done all my intros. Let's turn now to the main part of the webinar and think about going online. So we looked at our current workshops to identify what are the key elements that make them what they are, what makes it a Skillfluence approach, what can people expect to get from our sessions. And the challenge was that a lot of it was about interactivity, participation, engagement, group working, networking, bringing people together, things that were really practical and applicable. How do you take that online? How do you take those elements and translate that to an online world? So to look at how we got started and what we've learned so far, I'm going to chat with two of our trainers. And first, what I'd like to do is introduce you to Dr. Jamie Gallagher. And Jamie is a fantastic trainer, as well as being freelance. There he is. As well as being freelance, he's been running a number of very well received Skillfluence workshops over the last 2 or 3 years, I think now. But I think he's probably better positioned to introduce himself. So let me just start by saying welcome, Jamie, and please could you give us a little bit of an introduction?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Alison. Hello, everyone. I'm Jamie Gallagher, and Alison said I've been a trainer for Skillfluence for a couple of years now, and I am a freelance trainer and consultant. So I work all around the world, often with Alison spreading the Skillfluence good word. I kind of focus mainly on engagement, so public engagement or stakeholder engagement. I focus on impact, so creating change beyond the university, and increasingly, especially during this troubled time, on time and project management. So I've been doing a lot of work. And as Alison says, I've gone from a few weeks ago delivering all my training as in-person events, used to that personal connection, not having any particular setup at home, to in just a few short weeks, really rejigging how I do absolutely everything, and quite simply creating a setup and an interaction scheme that works for me and seems to be working for the participants as well.
So could you start by talking us through some of the kind of technical challenges then of going online and how you've managed that?
Yeah, so about, 4 weeks ago, if you had asked me to do something online, then I had my laptop and I would have Skyped in like the rest of the world. I'd never heard of Zoom. I now live my life on Zoom. And so what I started doing was just seeing what worked and what I needed. There is a million YouTube videos out there all about streaming and broadcasting. So I started watching lots of those. I started looking around the house for what bits of kit I could cobble together to give myself a better setup. For example, my mic on my laptop is pretty rubbish, but I do have a mic for podcasting and I can plug that in pretty simply. So that's plugged into my laptop. My web camera on my laptop isn't great either, so I've got my digital camera that's plugged in, using that as a webcam so that people can see me quite well and people can hear me quite clearly. And I started looking for ways that I could take the in-person training interactive elements and transfer them to an online space. So I get conversations started really early. I get people talking and sharing. I use breakout rooms all the time so that they can actually go into smaller groups as they would on tables and have those in-depth discussions, bringing them back for plenary sessions to discuss any questions that the group feel they need, and using a whole mix. So I play music, I play slides, I play games, I have links that I email out. So when I want them to do an activity that they'd be doing in person, I can send them a link that will have the resources that they need to do that in their own house. So I'm emailing things to read through, activities to share through, and even games to play. I found that pretty much anything that you can do in person can be done online. And to some extent, it's more important when you're online. It's so difficult for someone to look at a screen for a long time. And some of my training courses are a day long or more. And to expect people to sit at a computer is a big ask. So I've had to innovate as much as possible and try and bring the interactivity into the online.
So how do you make it? I mean, I always think of you in terms of as a trainer, as being a trainer and a kind of performer as well. So how do you make it really engaging for people and make them feel really connected to it?
Yeah, well, I think, as you said, I am a performer as well. So as well as being a trainer, I'm also a science communicator. So I'm often found on stage, on TV, on radio. I'm used to communicating and I really like it. And I have done lots of pieces to camera before. So I'm quite comfortable in front of a camera. Yeah. In terms for how I kind of went about it, I've kind of set myself a few rules. One of the simplest things that I do to improve my performance massively for me is that I'm not sitting down right now. I'm standing up and I need to stand up. If I'm going to be presenting, if I'm going to be performing, if we want to use that word, I need to be standing because that helps me switch into the mindset of a presenter. And I would normally deliver my courses standing. And so I do that here. And that's the first thing that actually helped me become a little bit more animated. The other thing, I make sure that every 10 minutes, something different is happening. And that 10 minutes is really important to keep attention and hold it. So every 10 minutes, I'll either be asking a question to the room, moving them into a breakout room, even just playing a video that can take away from my voice, or having an external guest speaker. Lots of little breaks. Even the simplest one that I build in to make something a little bit more engaging is to actually get them to switch off. So every 45 minutes or an hour, I ask participants to turn off their camera, turn off their microphone, and get away from their computer. And they all come back dead on in 5 minutes time, and they are more engaged and more refreshed for it. So there's lots of little tips that you can put in to make things more interesting. And also, as I said, games and quizzes.
Yeah, I mean, I think games and quizzes are great because it does keep it really interactive. I was just looking in the chat box, and someone sort of asking the question around how do you get a kind of buzz going, and how do you read the room? I mean, do you have any hints or tips for how you go around, you know, because there is something about the energy of a kind of live training, but I think there's elements that can be recreated. It'd be good to hear your thoughts.
Definitely. So I think you need to be very conscious of how people are consuming this information. So we're consuming this information on a screen. So one of the first things that I did was I thought, well, when we're at a laptop and we're watching videos, what kind of videos is it that we're watching? And so people are used to watching YouTube videos, and a prime length of a YouTube video is 4 minutes and 20 seconds. If you dive in and look at some of the most popular YouTube videos, they're quite high octane. So you do need to up the energy, have lots of interactivity, lots of breaks. I have even a little device that's set up that has little buttons. So at the push of a button, I can launch something different.
Oh.
And all these things just break up the content, because they don't want to just see one face talking to camera for 3 hours. So switching it between things, and also lots of practice as well. Before I was going live and doing sessions, I was watching lots of videos, playing around with things so that I can make things slick. And so people aren't kind of, not every 5 minutes kind of tapping my mic, asking, can people hear me, and losing my slides. I try and make sure I'm so prepared that it's going to be seamless for the participants.
Yeah, someone's asked, Sam's asked, what device do you use to switch? So what is that little box that you've got there? That looks quite cool.
So this little box is an Elgato Stream Deck, and it kind of comes from my past life as a gamer online, and it's just shortcut keys. So I have them programmed differently. So if I want my Twitter bio to appear, I can switch on and do a different button for that. So that's an Elgato Stream Deck.
That's
and
so cool.
I'm not using Zoom for my camera. My camera's coming in through another party. That's why I've got the Skillfluence logo as well. And these are all things, it takes a bit of time to get used to. And what I'm finding is every week I'm improving. I'm adding in an extra layer of kind of professionalism into the quality of what I've done. And this is, as you said, 4 weeks. 4 weeks ago, I just had my laptop like everyone else. I'm just learning, and every single training session I do, I add in a little something extra to improve it.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask, because I think like when we were starting out, you kind of think, all right, it's got to be all singing, all dancing. And it's just, you can't have too many new moving parts. So for someone that is just looking to start out, what would you say about, you know, what level to start with and how quickly to build up?
Yeah, I think one thing at a time is really, really important. So if this is your first Zoom call, then just sit at your desk, have your laptop, and do your first Zoom call. Join in with the chat where you can. If it's your second Zoom call, think, okay, well, this time I'm going to try standing up if you're able, and see if that changes your performance. The next thing would be raid around your house. What kind of microphones do you have? And hit record to see what you sound like. So if your laptop mic isn't fantastic, then maybe try your headphones, which are really good for picking up voice. Or maybe you have a dictaphone around the house that can connect through a USB. Once you've got that, then think, what cameras can you use? You can even use your mobile phone as a webcam, and that can be a better quality. But as I said, step by step by step, you do whatever you feel comfortable with, because I think what's really crucial to deliver effective training is for the presenter to feel in control and calm and collective. And if you try and do all these things at once, you're going to lose your place. So first thing, get comfortable with the tech. Second thing, get your mic sounding good, your camera sounding good. Then work at sharing and polls. Once you're happy with those, try games, try screen sharing, build it up one thing at a time.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think you need to feel like you can manage things yourself before getting all the additional things in. So tell me, like impact is a big part of the work that you do. You're really involved in it. How do you measure impact online? And is it better in some ways? Is there things that you can't do? How have you found that?
Well, in terms of impact that the training courses are having, things are different and things are changing. Actually, in some way, it presents quite a good opportunity for evaluation of impact, because people are in that kind of online mindset. People are quite happy to kind of maybe fill out a link before they do something. So when I would do an in-person training course, you'd be relying on giving out surveys probably at the end of the session, whereas with the online space you can be asking people to do things a little bit in advance, and they seem more willing to do that. It can feel part of the process. So I'm sending out work or surveys in advance to ask what people are doing, or even just starting off with a little quiz asking about what people know, what people feel. Sometimes I'm asking in a Zoom poll about the confidence in this particular topic. So in time and project management, I start off by asking about how people are feeling about their productivity. Are people happy with their current working conditions? And then we can go through the day, explore the topics, and then run those similar polls at the end to see if we manage to shift people into a happier place. And time again, when you compare and contrast the before and after, we're seeing that people are feeling happier and more confident about their working ability. So the online space can actually give us an advantage in capturing the impact.
Mm-hmm. You'd mentioned, when we were chatting about this before, you'd mentioned also social media can be, you can see the impact you have because it's maybe having a greater impact in social media. And I think some of the events that you've been involved in that are not Skillfluence events, but that you've been running as well, you've seen a lot of engagement online outside the actual training room.
Yeah, that's it. I think the online space is ideal for continuing the conversations and continuing the engagement. I think one thing I was telling you was that after one of the training sessions, I noticed that lots of people were emailing me. Now, every now and then I'll get people emailing maybe questions or follow-up comments, a lot of time asking for the slides or a bit of advice. But I'm noticing that more people are emailing me. Somehow it seems that because we're connecting through the computer, it seems okay to carry on that connection. So I'm actually having lots more useful follow-up conversations. And I think it's because the initial interaction is actually starting on the laptop. So we're carrying on that journey onto social media through email, whereas sometimes with in-person delivery, we're delivering and then we're away and the conversation doesn't continue quite as we hope.
Yeah, so you've got a kind of natural connection online already, and so it feels easier to move on. So, I mean, what would you find are the benefits of online training, and what are the drawbacks? What are the things that you're struggling to recreate, but what works really well and is better?
Well, I think my favorite thing about online training is the way I'm able to turn a day-long training program into modules so easily. So for a lot of the training that we're doing through Skillfluence just now, it would maybe be a day-long session that doesn't work online. So we take a modular approach and we're splitting it up. So maybe people will see me for 2 hours every week for a series of weeks. And that's fantastic to actually kind of build rapport. I set exercises between the first session and the last session. So what would just be a day of kind of, here's a lot to dump on you and then I'm gone. Through the online space, by splitting it up, we're continuing the engagement for a longer time. We're allowing them to reflect, to digest what we've been working on, and also set tasks in between. And that's a real advantage. That's something that we don't always have. If we're doing training far afield, we're not going to be having that contact every single week for a series of weeks. Yeah. The challenge for me as a presenter, I'm talking to a camera lens, and that's different. It's difficult to build up the rapport online in the room, and it takes a lot of work to keep the energy in the room quite high. So the advantage is the modular approach that we're taking and carrying on the conversation, having a more in-depth chance to get to know people. The disadvantage is the lack of connection I'm feeling when I'm delivering to a camera, and the amount of effort I need to put in to keep the energy in the room high.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. I mean, we've been using sort of different ways of connecting with people. So you're doing webinars or virtual classrooms and breakout groups, but also you can do things offline where people can work on their own using like our e-learning platform, or they may be working on a piece of work, an assignment to bring back, which is brilliant. But I have to admit, as a trainer, I much prefer it. So webinars are, you know, you're very much kind of talking at the camera. But what's nice is when you've got like Zoom groups and Zoom meetings, and at least you can see all the wee faces in front of you, and you kind of get a sense of feedback from them. So that can be really nice. Tell me, and there's been quite a lot of chat about this in the chat box. I can see there's loads of mentions of different tools that people are using. What tools do you use? And you know, tell us a little bit about how you use them.
Yeah, so there's probably three main brands of kind of tools that I'm using. The first one is the software that I've already mentioned. So my camera and my microphone are going into a third-party piece of software to come through into Zoom, and that allows my mic to be a little bit more synced up with my camera. It allows me to do overlays and things like that. So I'm using Ecamm Live and Black Hole to manage my camera and my mic. So that's the first part of software that I'm kind of using. The second thing that I'm using is my website. So I send links, as I mentioned, through to people during the training. So I just type in a short URL. They can click that and they can bring up the resources and the tools that they're going to need for the next section. And what I quite like about that is no one's ever going to find it, but it's there in the training, delivered exactly when it's needed with clear instructions. And then the third thing that I'm doing is using things like Kahoot, which is a quiz, and I can show you that later if you want, where I'm able to launch questions and get answers in live time. And it's something that's designed for schools to use, so it can handle hundreds of participants at a time, and it works really nicely. It's a way of making things quite interactive and engaging.
Okay, great. Because I mean, I remember when I was asking you, you know, do all these things work with big, you know, how big a group have you done it with? And you were like, it's worked with like 850 A-level students. So this definitely works with big groups. So that, I mean, like, it would be fantastic to have a look at Kahoot. Is that something that you could get up and running?
Yeah. So I can show you how I would run a Kahoot quiz. So everyone that's watching is going to be able to join in with this.
Okay. Great.
And
so everyone listen up. Yep.
So what I would like for you to do is, if you're able to have your Zoom window open, but also another web browser, so you're going to need two windows. The Zoom is going to show you the questions, and through a second window, you're going to be able to answer the questions. If you don't have a second browser handy, your phone also works fantastically for this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch a Zoom quiz, and I want you to go on your other browser to kahoot.it. You can just Google Kahoot and click the first link. And again, you can be doing this on your mobile phone or have a second window opened up next to it. When you go to kahoot.it, you're going to click play and enter in a game PIN number. And the game PIN number that you're going to enter in is 267866. So what I'm asking you to do to join in with this is go to kahoot.it or Google Kahoot and click the first link. Click play, and then enter in the PIN number that should be on your screen just now. And that PIN number is 677866. And that will allow you to join in. We're not downloading anything or installing anything into your phone. This will just allow your phone or web browser to turn into a voting handset that's going to let you answer the questions that will appear on screen. And as Alan said, I've done this with hundreds and hundreds of people before, and it works pretty smoothly. It's a paid service, so you do have to have a Zoom subscription. And there's also Mentimeter, which some of you might have come across, which does a kind of similar thing. But this allows me to put questions up on screen. It can either let me learn more about the audience, or it can have a competitive element. So I can have points awarded, and people will be able to see how well they're doing in comparison to everyone else in the room. Again, this is great for measuring the impact, so we can do some evaluation at the start and evaluation at the end. We've got lots of people joining already, so we've got over 50 players already in the room, and I'm going to launch the questions in a few seconds. Just 3 little questions to get to know you a little bit better, just to see what Zoom actually looks like. So if you're still joining, then it's going to Zoom, going to kahoot.it, clicking that first link, and entering in the game pin number 267866. I'm going to launch a survey now. There's no points available for this. It's just to let you see what it is I'm doing when I'm running my sessions. So here we go, 3 questions, and you'll be using that window or phone to answer the questions. So the first question, nice and simple, have you been to online training before? We're talking all about online training today, but have you been to a session, maybe a MOOC or a Skillfluence course? Have you been on the receiving end of this? And I can see all the answers kind of popping up. I can hear pops as people are answering. I've set the time limit to 30 seconds. We'll have 30 seconds to answer the questions, and then we'll see whether or not the room has been to online training before. So the results should pop up on your screen, and there we have it. So actually a lot of people already have. Interesting to know whether that's a recent thing or whether it's a historical thing as well. So I'll move on to the next question, another polling question. And this is, have you noticed demand for training increasing or decreasing? So I've spoken to lots of research and development people, and what I'm finding is people are looking to keep researchers busy during this very turbulent time. When researchers especially can't get into the lab, a lot of people are thinking, well, let's use this time for research or development. And so that's why through Skillfluence, bringing you lots of time and project management courses. So have you noticed the demand for training increasing or decreasing? I think it's about the same, don't know, decreasing or increasing, and got 32. So a lot of you noticing, as I would agree, an increased demand for training, wanting to use that research and development time productively. Last question, just to show you, you can use Kahoot for qualitative responses as well. So I'm asking you to type the answer to this one. Where are you based? I'm really curious to find out. So this goes a little bit beyond the functionality of a Zoom poll. This allows the respondents to type an answer, and we'll create a word cloud of where everyone is based. And that's starting to appear on the screen just now. And again, these, we're not capturing personal information from people, but potentially useful information from people. So when the time is up, we will see the responses. Is that big yellow one going to be London? Where are we? South England, some Edinburgh, Manchester, Oxford, Southampton, Edinburgh, Glasgow. Oh, I'm delighted. So many people joining us from Glasgow. I thought it was going to be London. It's always London. So I'm delighted to see so many local people joining in with the session. So that is Kahoot, and thanks for joining in with that. We'll cut back to Alison and I now as I come off that, and that's one of the ways that I've been making the training a little bit interactive. If you introduce a competitive element, then it's even more exciting because people really, they answer the questions and they see in the leaderboard how they're doing. I can also download a spreadsheet of how people have answered as well afterwards, so I can know, are there areas where people's understanding is a little bit wobbly, or are there areas that they're really clear cut on and we can move on to the next thing. So that's a little whirlwind tour of Kahoot. That was brilliant. Loved that. It's just fun as well. It's good fun and engaging. A few folk have asked, and just to let them know that the chat will be saved because there's lots of examples of things that people are mentioning, different tools. So we will save that so people have got access to it as part of the link that's sent out. Oh yeah, someone's wanting to see you in action at your next training course, Jamie. Any questions? Does anyone have any questions for Jamie? We've got a few technical questions, but I think they might be for another day. I think that might. Yeah. I'll scan through the chat as we're going through the rest of the session. Anyway, I'll be scanning through the chat, and if there's any simple questions that I can answer, I'll just type the responses in as well. So do keep questions, thoughts, comments coming in for me, and I'll scan back and look at them. Right now, I realize I'm talking to the camera, so I'm missing a lot of the chat. But once I'm off camera and you're back with Alison full time, I will look through the questions, and I'm happy to respond to them. That's great. So someone's asked about what about accessibility or impairments if someone's got visual impairments. How do you build in and manage to provide additional, to make sure it's really inclusive for people? A really fantastic question, actually. I actually used to work for a visual impairment charity. Kahoot is an example of an app that is actually fairly accessible for people with visual impairments. It's designed, if you were playing it on your phone, you'll have noticed that your phone will have just lit up 4 bright colors. And actually for a range of visual impairments, it's actually fairly easy for many people to focus down on that. So it's actually specifically designed to be fairly accessible. And obviously, because we're playing online, we're engaging online anyway, so we're assuming that people have access to all the equipment that they need. But lots of people are learning. There's lots of tips and resources out there for accessibility. One of my events that I ran recently that might be of interest to people, every week I run an event looking at public engagement on Zoom, and last week we ran a session on accessible engagement. So if you go to my website, if you just Google my name, Jamie Gallagher, it'll pop up. Click on the virtually social tab, scroll down to the bottom, you'll find a tab on accessible engagement. And in there's heaps of resources for many different types of accessible activities that can be done.
Brilliant. That's fab. Okay, I think we're just about out of time, but any last thoughts? Have you got if there was one bit of advice you were giving to someone that was starting out, what would it be?
Watch things that are happening. Watch some YouTubes, look at the setup and think, how can I replicate that? And as I've already said, go step by step. Do not try and do too much in one go, because it'll all come crashing down. Just take it nice and easy. No one is expecting all the bells and whistles. They're delighted when there's bells and whistles, and you can build up those gradually. Brilliant.
Thank you ever so much, Jamie. That's been fantastic.
No problem. Thank you.
Cool ideas there, and we've got us all jealous of the tech. So thanks very much. That's been fantastic. And we'll see you soon on future training. All right.
Brilliant.
Thanks very much,
Alison.
Jamie. Thank you. Okay. What I'm going to do now is let me just share my screen again. Now I'd like to introduce, moved too far ahead there. Now I'd like to introduce Joanne. So a very warm welcome to Joanne Hagerty. Now Joanne is a Skillfluence trainer and facilitator, and she has a really vast experience in collaborative workshops, innovation, and online and taking innovation and collaborative tools online. So I'm going to introduce Joanne now. I'm hoping that there she is. Great.
Hi, Alison.
Hello, hello, and thank you very much for joining us
No
today.
problem. Great to join you.
Yeah, and you've got a bit of peace and quiet, I see.
I have, yeah. I usually have a 3-year-old toddler at home, so he tends to climb on me during conference calls, but he's been sent out for his daily exercise. So it's just another challenge we've been navigating in this new normal.
That's brilliant. Well, we appreciate it. Well, thank you very much for coming along today. So what I'd be really interested in finding out from you is, what have you found to be the difference between online versus offline training?
That's a great question. I thought Jamie touched on so many things that I've been thinking a lot about. For me, when I'm designing training, it's always about getting that balance between sort of structure and space, and giving people space to explore ideas, to get to know each other. And actually with online, I think we kind of tend to default to online learning, where it's easy to have structure and content, but actually giving people space to go away and do things and try things out is the hard bit. So actually we've touched on a lot of the good tools that are out there to do that and design the space into training. And I've just been spending a lot more time on the training design. I've been doing training for about decades, and generally in a room or in a group situation, we know what works, we know the tools that work, and you can read the room. So actually spending a bit more time thinking about how that plays out online and what the user experience is for participants is really important.
Because I know in like face-to-face training, you're always you're really great about getting the environment right. So
yeah,
the physical environment, but also the kind of the warmth and the energy that you can bring to a room. So how do you translate that to, you know, to an online world?
I think it's an important one, and it's kind of certain elements such as maybe like cohort building or something. You take some of that offline before. So Jamie touched on that, you know, giving people some pre-work to do and actually giving people an opportunity to introduce each other. I think some things around accessibility are really important just in this current environment. I've had people join Zoom meetings from their bedroom. So actually telling people it's okay to switch the camera off if you're not comfortable sort of sharing that space. And, you know, just actually at the front end of workshops, a bit of housekeeping sort of is good, you know, just things like teaching people Zoom etiquette. This is a brave new world for all of us. So a lot of people are unsure how to interact. So actually just spending a bit of time helping people, you know, just acclimatise to the new tools that we're using is really important.
And when we were chatting before, you were, one of the things that you really wanted to kind of highlight was the difference between training and online learning. So could you explain a bit what you mean by that?
Yeah, it's kind of, with Skillfluence, I suppose our ethos is very much that slide you put up at the beginning. It's interactive, it's learn by doing, you know, it's collaborative learning as well. And I think online learning tends to be one individual with a PowerPoint slide and, you know, imparting knowledge in a group. But actually, it's really about learning as giving people the opportunity to test and try things. So that's a new challenge we face, and how we do that in a meaningful way in an online environment. And we can monitor and ensure people are enjoying it and keep that energy going as well. It's really important.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the things, isn't it? It's hard to, you know, make sure that it's really engaging and interactive, and you've really got to design that in so that it's not some kind of seminar or a lecture. It's a workshop, and that's different.
My one point would just be testing. If there's one sort of word to take away from this, it's testing. I have designed workshops that look good on paper, that, you know, in your heads actually are the online equivalent of what you'd be doing in a live workshop environment. But actually I've run through them beforehand and realised that, you know, they don't render well, that the experience is horrible for people. So it's kind of actually spend a bit of time testing, and even to the point of just knowing that the tools and the platforms you're going to use are working. I saw a comment in the chat earlier about somebody using their family quiz to test, you know, using Zoom. Great idea, you know, for people who will be delivering training, just get it about these tools and try out different things. And I think finding some friendly faces, be it colleagues or family, who'll kind of come on to these things so you can sort of learn by doing yourself is really important.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've been finding is that you know, sometimes like on residential type events or summer schools and things like that, there's that real intensity of bringing people together. And it's just, I mean, they're usually really lovely events, and it's really intense, and there's kind of pressures and time pressures and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But you can't recreate that by doing the same thing online and just saying, right, we're all going to sit in our own individual rooms for 2 days.
Yeah,
and, you know,
you can. I have seen some great examples of cohort building. So I think some people are doing it really well. I suppose for me, it's again coming back to think about the purpose of the training and the outcomes. It might be that cohort building is not the main thing you want people to get from it, but when it is important, it's really important to design that in. So be it designing a sort of facilitated exercise up front for introductions, or taking that offline, not offline, but taking that into the pre-work of the course, so you're not spending a lot of time getting to know people. Because what you lose is that time over coffee. You know, if you give people a coffee break online, they scuttle off their kitchen and get a cuppa, whereas in a workshop environment, people are chatting, getting to know each other. So actually giving a visibility of who's participating and enabling that. I'm lucky, a lot of the training I do is around working with industry. So I use it as a way to sort of strong arm people onto testing LinkedIn to connect with cohorts. But I've also seen really innovative uses, things like pub quizzes, people who are running longer programs, you know, as Jamie sort of alluded to, when you've got a cohort that you're working with over a series of weeks, it's really important to build in that fun element. And we would do that in a live training environment. So actually designing in some time that is purely social and it's not really about the training is great. And we we predominantly work with PhDs, and for those guys it can be an isolated and an isolating process in normal times, and we've got to be mindful that, you know, we're in a very abnormal time. So, you know, getting them to share tips with each other, sometimes just allowing a bit of space for discussion and, you know, survival tips or ways to keep sane during lockdown. I find that to be really important, and giving them an opportunity to bond and to actually get to know each other.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you were running a course yesterday, weren't you, that was part of a Connecting with Industry, a kind of longer program that was for a Centre for Doctoral Training. So that's a kind of cohort. So what kind of thing did you do as part of that? Was it like as part of a bigger program, but this was a 1 hour session? So talk us through what that looked like.
Yeah, so that group, I was lucky. I've been working with other trainers on it, so we came together, and they had a level of comfort, but you always ensure that the session starts with a bit of open discussion about how they found the pre-work, but also how they've been doing, you know, checking in on people and see how they're finding it. This particular group were scientists, so a lot of them are really frustrated. You know, the pause has been pressed in their PhD. The engagement is super for training. I find that really remarkable that, you know, in such an uncertain time, people are just desperate to get their teeth into something. So I find the engagement, if anything, was even better than we would have in normal times. But the course, it's trying to give that openness to the structure and, you know, allow space for the breakout groups. There's been a lot of discussion in the chat earlier about Zoom and Microsoft Teams. I personally use Zoom, and the breakout rooms are great. They actually work in the same way that it would for a facilitator walking about the room and dropping in conversations. You know, when you enter the room, it changes the dynamic. You can see where people are buzzing with ideas, or maybe there's a bit of a struggle or a difficult dynamic. So it's a nice way to get people interacting, but also to be able to check in on that. And one big bonus, I would say, is that while everybody's at home, we have a captive audience. So in yesterday's webinar, I was able to get a speaker to come in and talk about his journey from PhD and into different career paths. So in normal times, this is a very sort of busy guy who's, you know, tends to travel a lot, and it would be difficult to secure a day of his time and, you know, factor in travel. So it was brilliant that he could drop in, and it really enriched the session. And that's something, you know, as we go back to online, I think I'll be using more of a blended approach to bring the speakers into the room. That was a huge bonus.
Yeah, oh, that's fantastic. It sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay, now Jamie has shown us Kahoot.
Yeah.
What's your experience of using tools for online learning?
So I thought Jamie's advice was really sound, kind of little and incremental. About 2 weeks ago, I have a network of other trainers that I've worked with, and that, you know, we share insights. And about 2 weeks ago, my inbox was full of new snazzy tools that we could use. I'm kind of taking baby steps on it. I want things that I know I've tested and that work, but also that, you know, my peers have used and reviewed and really have said that this is a good tool. And for me, it's always coming back to aligning these tools with the outcomes, you know, because there are some really snazzy, fun things that we can use, and it's great for engagement, but actually really thinking about what are we trying to achieve here, and will that tool move me closer to the outcome I want? So again, just a very slow and steady approach, and, you know, that great advice about trying one new thing at a time is always good.
Yeah, for sure. So are there any, I think you had mentioned that there might be one that you could give us a little peek at.
So I've got a tool that I've used in another contract that I do that's delivered purely remotely. So it's something I've been working with for about 2 years now. And I'm going to try and share it on screen. And it's a collaborative tool. It's called Canvanizer. I'll just pop it up here. So hopefully you can see it. Is it up on screen now?
It is, yeah, I can see it for sure.
Perfect.
Hopefully everyone can see it.
So what this is, I've seen a lot of talk of Padlet, and I think this is largely similar in that it's a sort of collaborative tool where people can put up notes. I use it a lot because in industry-centric training, we use things like the business model canvas, the lean canvas. So it works well for this, but I also love it for brainstorming. I think one of the challenges with online is that you want people to have sort of share a voice. You get people who are more comfortable with speaking online. So here I've popped up an example here where we're looking at opportunities and challenges of training online. And hopefully you can see some of the team are working in the background, popping some notes up. So hopefully you can see these appear. So this is really nice. And I think especially for that initial brainstorming stage, just to let everybody have an input. And again, just doing sort of collaborative work from different locations. I think people always think it's quite magical when they're doing things like the business model canvas and it suddenly appears and comes to life before their eyes. So it's a really nice tool. I will admit it's one that was made actually by some students in a hackathon, so it's not the most polished of interfaces, but actually the core tool is just phenomenal. It works so well, and I really love using it.
Yeah, someone's just asking, can you use Canvanizer during a Zoom session?
Yeah. So I've used it just in a similar way that we've seeing here, but I'm sending people off to breakout rooms and giving them links to individual canvases. And again, I can check in, I can both drop into the breakout room and see that the conversation's flowing, but I can also check in on the canvases and check that either the ideas are coming together or they're sort of inputting into the canvas. And the really nice thing is you get this at the end in a sort of shareable format. So they've got a nice PDF or image to take away, and you can leave these links open. So if it's something that does have ongoing value beyond the training session, you can allow the participants to use this beyond the actual session itself.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And so the things that people have seen coming up there, that's Zach and Rachel in the background. They're typing in post-it notes and sticking them up live as we're talking just now. So you can imagine that totally in a group of people actually all being able to work just as you would in a real life workshop where you're all posting up post-it notes onto a whiteboard or onto a flip chart paper or something like that. And the great thing is that you don't have to type it up afterwards, from the sounds of things.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. I think people do like seeing their ideas come together. And I think somebody had asked earlier about just that idea of brainstorming and grouping ideas. So it does have that benefit that you can, there's actually a brainstorming function where you switch to, and hopefully this will show, but it gives you a sort of post-it note. It's similar to sitting at your desk with a pile of post-its, so people can input and you kind of dump them all together, and then you can go in and create logical groups and sort them accordingly. So it's really nice for that initial brainstorming as well.
That's super cool. Just a final question from someone: is it free to use?
There is a free version. I've moved to what they call the pro version, and it's something like £60 a year. And I know there's an interim version which is about £30. So it's it's a great tool. I find a lot of the things I've been sent have got either licenses or cost per user, and they are quite restrictive when you want to use them with a large group. But this one, you get a sort of core group, and your team can have access to set up folders and sharing, but you can actually share it with a wider audience. So you could share with hundreds or thousands of participants editable links to the individual canvases that you've set up.
Brilliant. Okay, well that's fantastic. I've just noticed the time, so I'm going to finish up our chat there. But that's been really interesting, and thank you for showing the Canvanizer. It's a brilliant tool. That's really cool.
And like Jamie, I'll answer any individual questions on the chat at the end of it. Happy to share any insights on that.
That's fab. Thanks ever so much. And
thank you.
Back to sharing my screen. So hopefully you can see that there now. Okay, so I just aware of the time now. I want to try and finish up as close to past as we can. So I just wanted to kind of pull together some of my thoughts on what's been going on. And really the sense from me is that right now we're responding to circumstances. We don't have a choice about what we're doing. We can't choose, is it better to meet or is it better to do it online? But in fact, there are some elements that are actually better online. So for example, some of the things around accessibility, self-directed learning, the chance to rewatch things. Lots of people have been saying, is this available for later? Well, yes, you can go back and you can see all this. Notes and comments are easy to collect. because they're often automatically recorded, as they are in our chat box, as they are with Canvanizer, and the same with Kahoot. It sounds from what Jamie's saying, you know, that participants seem to feel less intimidated to speak up and ask questions, and we can bring in expertise and speakers from far and wide. And participants, so we're not limited by geography in the same way as we often are. You can also get really great engagement if you make sure that the content's directly relevant and applicable to participants. You know, that you're giving them something that's really useful that they can apply and they can use right now. So the program that Joanne was involved in delivering yesterday is a 6-week program, and we've pretty much 100% engagement all the way through that, including more than 90% completion of all the assignments throughout that. So you can see that people do engage if it's meaningful to them. Whatever you're trying to do, training design and planning is really key. So making sure that you're thinking about what are the aims, what are you actually trying to achieve, and making sure that it's something that you can actually do on an e-learning platform, or that you can do it in Zoom, and working out the dynamics of your training course, rather than just going, right, well, it was a one-day workshop, let's make it a one-day kind of, let's make it a one-day online program. I don't think it quite works that way. I think we all knew that more and more life would move online and would become more important in the future. Right now, this has really speeded things up. Building knowledge of online tools, confidence for connecting digitally. As we can see, we've all been upskilled in using Zoom, sometimes maybe a little bit much, but you know, that really will help to speed the adoption and the confidence levels. But importantly, we're social, you know, we're social creatures. I think a lot of us miss being able to gather together, and we need to really make sure that we stay connected, we keep in contact, we continue to communicate, we learn together. And I know when I was talking to Joanne yesterday about this, she was saying it's about being human, you know, and you know, remembering that this is a human contact, and workshops and training and learning is a very human, you know, being, you know, bringing the humanity to it, I suppose. And with that in mind, we had a lot of great feedback from you over the last couple of webinars, and one of the themes that came up a lot is that you would love to know who else is in the room, and wouldn't it be great if you could network with each other? Well, webinars aren't really the best place for that. They're not quite so good for the kind of high interaction and sharing. So with that in mind, we've decided that we'd like to set up a one-off event for tea and biscuits. So we're going to put up a poll in a moment where you can express your interest in coming along. So it's a small group forum, maximum of 16 people, so we're going to keep it really limited. And the idea is that you can use it to network, to share and discuss, somewhere where you can gain mutual support around current challenges or areas of interest. Basically a kind of chance for the group here to go a bit deeper and explore some of the things that we've been talking about today. Basically what we'll do, we'll provide a lovely virtual room with a vase of flowers where you can meet up. We'll give you a bit of structure for conversation. We'll get you into small groups, and we'll provide tea and biscuits. Okay, we can't really provide tea and biscuits. You have to bring your own cuppa. But it's going to be held on Tuesday the 12th of May at 10 AM. We think that you'll find it really useful, you'll find it stimulating and supportive. The numbers will be kept small just to make sure that it's meaningful. So there should be a poll up now, and please let us know if you would like to be involved. And once we know who's interested, then we'll get back to you and we can send out more details and instructions on how to join. There's also an option to kind of say, yes, I'd like to join, but I can't join on that date. That one doesn't work for me. And what I'd say is, so this event is being recorded, but the tea and biscuits will not be recorded. That would be a bit weird. It would be a bit like going into the coffee room and starting to record conversations. This is a relaxed, informal conversations amongst researcher developers, basically. to give you a chance to learn from each other, share ideas, and keep that kind of forward momentum. I think we'll maybe just give another 5 seconds. Just another few seconds. Any last minute? So thank you everyone for all your responses there. That's fab. We'll, I think, end that poll now. Okay, and just to finish up, really, I mean, at the beginning, I said I hope that you get, you know, a new idea, insight, hear something new from people, learn something from this, and get one kind of action from it to help you keep moving forward. Hopefully you've done that. I mean, I've seen loads of stuff in the chat box that I'm going to have to read back on, because there's lots of interesting tools that are being shared out there, which is brilliant. We've also just timed it. My cat has just leapt onto the table, so I think this has been perfect timing. I think he's saying it's time to finish up now. So thank you very much to everyone for joining us. If you want any more information about anything, then please do feel free to email me at alison@skillfluence.co.uk. I know that Joanne and Jamie have said they'd be very happy to answer questions as well. So any questions that you have, anything you'd like to discuss further, please do get in touch. We'll have another webinar in a few weeks' time. It's going to be around engagement, and we'll send out more details about that very soon. But in the meantime, thanks very much for joining us. It's been great to have so many of you here, and just stay indoors and learn online. Thanks very much, everyone, and we'll hope to see you at the next webinar.